Well, it is now 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome everyone to MBA Education's and Truth's webinar, Minimizing Risk with GSE Borrower Verifications. My name is Sheila Coble, and I will be assisting with facilitating today's session. Just a couple of reminders about the Zoom platform. You can bring up the chat box by clicking on the chat icon on the black bar located at the bottom of your screen. You may need to wiggle your mouse a bit for the bar to appear, but once you click on the icons, a box should pop up, and this is where you can ask questions or make comments for the presenters. Also, please note at the end of the presentation today, we'll ask you to complete a brief survey. We encourage you to provide your honest feedback as it will help us to improve our future webinars. Once the webinar has concluded, we'll provide a link to today's recording along with a PDF version of today's presentation for your convenience. In addition, we encourage you to type your questions into the chat throughout the presentation today. We'll do our best to answer them as we go along, and if not, we will address them at the end of the presentation. I would now like to introduce you to our moderator for today's webinar, Richard Grieser, Vice President of Marketing with Truth. Richard, the floor is all yours. And again, thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and for putting this together. Welcome, everybody. I'm Richard Grieser, VP of Marketing. I look like I'm in witness protection in a hotel room because I'm at the Housing Wire conference right now. But you've come to the right place if you're here to learn about minimizing risks with GSE borrower verifications. This is really about providing practical guidance that your organizations need to optimize your borrower verification workflows, and there are new platforms similar to like Truth that are consumer permission platforms that are really cutting edge right now, and you can learn right now from someone who's using it right now. And we're going to introduce Femi Aye. We're really privileged to have him here. But without further ado, let's jump into the introduction slide, if you don't mind, Sheila. And what we're going to do is each person's going to introduce themselves individually. So my name is Richard Grieser again, VP of Marketing at Truth. I'm really happy that my CEO is able to join us too. So Carol, you want to give a quick introduction? Maybe say something fun about yourself and a little bit about your background.
My name is Kirill. I'm CEO and co-founder here at Truth. The fun fact is Truth exists because I was rejected for a loan and I couldn't get it for a little bit, and I couldn't figure out why until I learned that they couldn't really verify my income, and that's why we're here.
Femi.
All right, I'm Femi Aye, EVP of Operations at Revolution Mortgage. I keep the mousetrap working together. We're a relatively new IMB in the 5-year-old span, and we're doing about $2 billion in business, so we're growing pretty heavily. Hope to be in that 3 number by the end of the year. Fun fact about myself, I don't know. I love cooking. I love bourbon. I love wine, and I love playing cards in my spare time. Also, Six Sigma Green Belt.
Wow. All right, Jody, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard. I'm Jody Eberhardt. I'm a director of seller strategy and optimization here at Freddie Mac. I'm part of Kevin Kaufman's seller engagement team. My team is really a small consulting group, and we help lenders leverage Freddie Mac technology to save money and reduce risk and implement affordable lending programs. I guess a fun fact about me, that was a surprise question. So home for me is South Texas, like near South Padre Island. And in my spare time, my husband and I go out and play music. So I play fiddle, he plays guitar, and play out a couple times a week at coffee shops and bars.
Very cool. And
wow.
Brooke.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Smith. I'm a senior manager at Fannie Mae in our loan sourcing digital solutions group. I have been at Fannie Mae for almost 20 years, really focused on technology and improving innovations that can help kind of move the needle on the goal of a digital mortgage. Let's see, I am currently the product owner for DU Validation Service. And I guess a fun fact about me, my first job at Fannie Mae was as an intern when I was getting my MBA, and my whole job was to go around and talk to the owners of different technology solutions to make sure they were ready for Y2K. So that just kind of tells you how long I've been around at Fannie Mae. So
That's awesome. Well, Jody and Brooke, thank you so much. And thank you so much to Freddie and Fannie for allowing you guys to participate and being part of this conversation. You're doing a lot of great stuff for lenders, and that's what this is about. So without further ado, why don't we start off with everybody in the audience, a little bit of participation here. Just write in the chat if you can, why are you here? What business problems are you trying to solve? Are you trying to just learn more about the webinar? Please, we'd love to see some participation. So give it, write something in the chat if you don't mind. And while that's going on, Sheila, you can kick off that first poll whenever you're ready. Go for it.
While you guys are going on that poll, the poll's asking if you use the Fannie Mae AIM or the if you use the Freddie Mac AIM or the Fannie Mae DU validation service. I want to hear from you guys. More importantly, do you use it? Do you use it at the level that you're comfortable with? Are you happy with your percentage of files that are using these validations?
Love that. Well, I mean, Femi, the obvious question is, do you mind taking a stab there and letting everybody know a little bit of how you would answer that?
Well, sure. I'm on the spot. It should be fun. We're using it. We're not leveraging it to where we need to be, which is why you guys have seen so much of me over the last couple of months. We've got a big push within our platform to try and start getting the rep and warrants on about 16% of our total business that we're producing, so that we can kind of create a fast lane in underwriting that says, minimum documentation, minimum standards, faster production. So we are we are deep in the platform with you guys to try and make that a reality for 24 and 25.
I love it. I love it. So before we do the poll results, let's just speak to some of the comments that I'm seeing coming in right now. Some people are just here to learn more. Some people are here to improve the borrower experience, which is great, David. And there's one that I thought was really, really relevant, was how do I get my sales team to use it? I thought that was pretty big too. So, well, definitely going to touch on all of these topics here, everybody. So you've come to the right place to learn about these topics here. So why don't we do this, Sheila? Why don't you share some of the poll results, and let's take a look and see what do we got here?
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise,
Yeah.
surprise.
Wow.
59% in the nose. What?
Yeah, strange. Well, it's interesting. Can anybody who's in the audience who answered no to this question, can you please, for this poll, just write into the chat why? If you it would help us to understand, kind of catering to the audience. Yeah, if you can, no, not that you answered no, but like why you answered no, like why aren't you doing it right now? I'm just curious. Well, let's move on to the next question. I'm going to get back to the answers if people answer that. So, all right, let's go to the next question, Sheila. Cool. So I'm going to start. I'm going to tee this up to Femi first. How do we move as an industry towards the digital future?
Breathing and taking this in a small step-by-step reasonable response. Reasonable response is we start by showing ROI and showing the improved speed on the manufacturing of loan products. We turn effort into a marketable security when we make a loan note. There is no raw material in our manufacturing process, so our limits are it's really up to what you can produce. Moving us in towards the digital future is getting people to say, I've been doing something the same way for 30 years, changing that mindset and start to say, how do we do this the fastest way possible? How do we do this at the way that scales the best? How is it that I can walk in and buy a car and be in and out in 2 hours, and I'm still taking 26 days to take a mortgage? We've got to take a certain point from the lender's aspect. We've got to be able to take technology, show the ROI in the technology, and then leverage that ROI to increase production or increased production, increased profitability from the individual lenders. Using the tools like your company's product and using the outlets that Fannie and Freddie give us the option for, that allow us to make a more secure, better verified note that's not going to come back and bite us in 3 years later on, and just do it on a faster process.
Jody, do you want to comment there?
Yeah, I can add on a little bit to that too. So I think Femi's right. I mean, the first step is really helping people understand the value in what they do. And we see lenders every day that are leveraging these tools to really scale to market demand. So as volume goes up and down, it can really help them do that. Obviously, we're here to talk about risk today. That was kind of our core, talk about fewer errors and greater loan quality and more consistency in the process. But the other thing I'll mention as a comment to the loan officer question is really helping the loan officers understand that out of this process, you can actually end up with increased customer satisfaction and some more loyalty. So you're going to eliminate those lost documents, which is the number one dissatisfier in some of the Strathmore surveys. And then the other thing is reducing that time to close and giving the borrower more certainty by giving the loan officer more certainty up front. So really helping everybody see the value end to end. I think the other piece that we're going to touch on is there was a few metrics we can share. So last year, Freddie Mac did a study on digital innovation and how it drives loan quality. And I think these metrics really help people understand. So what we found is lenders that had a fairly high use of Freddie Mac technology, meaning all the rep and warranty offerings that we offer, we saw that they produced loans that were $1,700 less expensive, which in today's world is a big deal. We saw that they had a 7-day shorter cycle time, also a big deal in this market. And then lastly, 40% fewer defects. And that's not only defects from repurchases, but Femi, to your point, that's what happens 3 years out. We saw reduced risk all the way across the board.
That's awesome. Brooke, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, we have a similar approach and we've looked at similar data. For us, we also looked at the defect rate when a lender uses one of our solutions. And for us, with one solution, it's generally 33% lower defect rate. But when we're using 2 or more of the solutions, we're talking income, employment, asset verification, the defect rate is reduced by 50 to 70%. So you can imagine that just the certainty involved with having used a digital verification service really helps to ensure that you're not hit at the back end in the QC process.
Very cool.
Sure, we're going to get to talk about those later on when we start doing the case study.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just want everybody to know, if you're looking at the chat, there's some fantastic comments coming in right now. You have folks talking about they want more education for their LOs so they get more reps and warrants. You've got folks in capital markets who are reviewing loans and trying to understand how, something like a consumer permission platform affects those loans that are coming in. So fantastic audience you're getting pretty much across the organization at a lender right now in the audience, and they're all interested in this. So I'm really excited for this. Let's keep going. Let's go to the next question. So how can a digital strategy help some of the challenges? And the 3 challenges we've thrown here, everybody knows it's a little bit doom and gloom for the industry, but what's really great is we've got these products that are being offered by Fannie and Freddie to really help lenders overcome a lot of these challenges. And so, folks like Femi are taking advantage of these and are going to help talk about it during this call, during this webinar right now, about how they're being successful with them. So, I'll just go through them really quick. Average IMB lost $2,109 in Q4. That's an MBA. They've been putting this out since 2003. The average profitability. And some people, look at this calculation differently, but, I think it's a good overall stat for the industry. Up to 3 years after buying a loan to request a repurchase, right? That's basically the risk that a lender has. And each buyback can result in an average of $100,000 a loss. And then finally, I think the biggest one here for our industry, I'm at a conference right now. So what everybody's talking about is basically rates aren't coming down as low as everybody thought just at the end of last year. I mean, we're talking about like 3 rate cuts in December. There was a lot of lenders who sounded like they were like making plans based on that. And it's not looking like that right now, right? Matter of fact, it's definitely not looking like that. So So Femi, why don't you take a stab at this? How can a
Mm.
digital strategy help alleviate some of these challenges?
I want to focus on number two. I want to focus on number two, but I want to identify how number one gets is really connected with number two. So when you start saying the average IMB lost 2,100 per origination, what's going on in those numbers is the total cost that it takes to operate the IMB divided by the total number of units that they're closing. All right. So if you have giant repurchase costs, or you have indemnification costs, or you have things that are loan quality costs, right? That's not actually saying that you're losing, 2,000 every time you close a unit. If I was closing 1,000 units a month and losing $2,000 per loan, I wouldn't be on this webinar, right? So that's something that's in there to understand. But and the piece that I really love about this is if you could, for everybody that's sitting in my chair, that's in operations, that's responsible for loan quality, that's responsible for manufacturing a quality product that's going to be sold the first time and quickly, if you could just eliminate your ability to, or eliminate your exposure to fraud, and eliminate your exposure to documents that are insufficient, and just put yourself in a space where you could trust your information at day one up front. Think of what you get in benefit for there, what you save in QC and QA, what you save in third-party review, what you save in underwriting, what you save in processing, what you benefit your loan officers and your originators with being able to give direct answers right up front. That's where you want to go. So the real question is, how do you get a digital strategy to help some of these? Your digital strategy, again, if you want to start saving money on loans, lower your cycle times. You stop paying employees 65 hours to do one particular product when you can get that product down to an hour by that employee, right? You want to start working those things as fast as possible. That'll start raising your revenue per loan. Again, if you can increase your validity of your information up front, get it right, get it once, get it the first time, you're going to limit your exposure for buybacks. And number three, I hate to use my dad's parables, but if you're praying for rain and you're waiting for that to happen, you're going to lose out to everybody that's out there farming right now. So get to work. Don't worry about the rates. We're all playing in the same environment. It's not like some evil empire out there has access to 4% and we're competing against that. We're all playing the same game right now. And, people need a place to live. Affordability is at an all-time low. Challenges are at an all-time high. Producing a mortgage is as hard as it's ever been. Let's figure out ways where we can strip out some of the things that have been piled onto us since 2008, 2009, and start to say, how can we get direct to source data, information at the front of our process as fast as we can, trust it, verify it, move on.
Hey, before I tee this up to Brooke first, then Jody, I do want everybody in the audience to know that, I attend a lot of conferences, I talk to a lot of lenders, and Femi is looked amongst his peers as one of the experts. And if you listen to him talk, he really knows what he's talking about. So this is a great opportunity. If you got questions, even specific questions, he's happy to jump into it, and I'm going to call him out. So throw it in the chat if you've got a real specific question. Like, this is your time to get the question answered. And he loves helping. So like, you can reach out to him individually. Brooke, please.
So while Femi was talking, I was thinking about another aspect of this with rates not coming down, kind of addressing number three. And if you think about it, there are a lot of potential borrowers out there, but they don't have as many, there's not as much volume, there's not as many opportunities for home purchases right now. So you're really kind of trying to make sure that if you have a consumer that you're working with, they're kind of connecting with you, they're sticky, they're having a good experience. And so I think this digital validation, rather than having to deal with a lot of paperwork, can really help a consumer experience. And that's one of the reasons that I loved devalidation service from the very beginning, was that really painful experience. And on top of dealing with the rates, just thinking about what that consumer experience is like. And we'll talk, I think, a little bit more about how to make the experience smooth for them end to end. But I think that one way to look at addressing some of these challenges is just trying to, how do you reach a borrower by demonstrating that you can close a loan quickly, or not ask for a lot of additional documentation and that kind of thing.
Jody?
Mhm. Nice. I think back to number 3 in the purchase market, those loans just historically have higher defect rates anyway. So regardless of whether you're in a purchase market and there's higher defects, or you turn to refi and you want to use these tools so that you can scale your resources better, either way is a great time to move more toward a digital strategy. So I would ignore the rates and just step in and get started. I think the other thing that I'll mention is that seeing kind of the financials really can help you create a business case. So what we see as a trend right now is a lot of the costs are being pushed out to the branches, for example, where they have to pay the cost for these reports, but the benefits are really at an organization or a company level around repurchases and operational efficiency and all these other things. So as part of, how I think about these benefits is you really have to get the organization to think of them as a whole, because you're going to make a pretty significant tech investment up front, and you need to get the loan officers engaged, but the benefit is realized for the whole organization. So I think that's probably a challenge for all the lenders on the calls, to really get everybody thinking along the same line.
We have a question in the audience that I think is pretty interesting. It's from Kelly Haney, and she's saying we have a wholesale channel.
He's saying.
And what's that?
He's saying.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. Look at that. So they have a wholesale channel. He's saying, any tips to get higher adoption rate? And so I think they're talking about adoption of reps and warrants, right, through Fannie and Freddie. I don't think they're talking about consumer permission platform yet. That's how I interpret that. Do you agree?
I've known Kelly for a little bit, and what I think he's trying to get at is, how does he get the people that are selling his wholesale to use the rep and warrant relief? My secondary is the one place that I don't really play in when you call it out on I know what I've got going on. But what I would specifically say is you could offer a slight pay up, because you'll have validation where you don't have to worry about misrepresentation. You don't have to double check the information if you have the rep and warrants that are on there. So you can either offer incentives to folks that are using rep and warrants when they're delivering to you, or you can essentially, require specific amounts or specific percentages to have those specific characteristics.
Interesting. Well, you're getting some follow-on questions that are very similar too, right? From Jay Chapman and Alan. Well, let's start with, I'm actually going to, because it's similar to what you were saying. Alan was saying, do you have a standard documentation verification pathway you follow for every loan, like a work number, standard VOE, Fannie or Freddie tools, like Troop? Do you see that comment?
Sure. I can see the request in there, and what I can say is we do. We've I mean, we've been friends with True for a little while now. I think a rather tough fish to get up started. Started talking to you guys in February. We didn't have verifications going through until August, because there's a lot of information to validate along the way. But one of the things that we realize is that we need to cast the widest net possible. All right, you're not going to get day one certainty or AIM verification on every usage that you get, or on every file that comes back, but you are going to get it on a high percentage. So the first thing is you've got to cast a relatively wide net. And the other thing is that these consumer permissioned items are actually, they're allowable via Dodd-Frank. So you can put them at the front of the application. You don't necessarily need to have intent to proceed in order to get the consumer permissioned information out there. So I would start with that with your branches and or with your originators, is get the information up front, integrate it into your POS system, integrate it into your workflow, so it's the very first thing that they can do. Jody and Brooke can talk about their benefits of their VOA platform, and you can work with your individual reps at any of the different companies that offer the consumer validation services, that you can come up and say, or the consumer permission validation services, you can come up and say, hey, I want my waterfall to start with a VOA, and then I want to go to the VOIE, and then I only want to do re-verifications at this specific space. So putting that at the front of your application and understanding that the wider net that you have, the more pickup you're going to get, is really where I would start.
So let's jump into the next slide, if you don't mind. This one, I think, is really kind of getting into the meat and potatoes. I'm going to tee this one up to Kirill. Kirill, what is a consumer permissioned verification provider, and what are the major benefits? We've been talking about this on this webinar, but some folks in the audience are very new to this. So why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Richard. I'll start with saying what is Truth. We're an open finance platform. So we don't think about us as a consumer permission just verification provider. We do a little bit more than that. But the idea is always the same. It's like, instead of me going and buying data from third parties and then relying that the third party has accurate data, we can go directly to the source. And when you go directly to the source, whether it's a bank or a payroll provider or anything else, you can actually get better quality data, but you need consumer engagement. And that's why it's called consumer permissioned verification, right? Consumers have to give you explicit permission. And the way we do it is by, let's say you have ADP. We ask you for login and password, or we'll ask you to confirm your identity with 6-digit code where you get an email or a phone number, or you get a text. And when we log into the payroll provider, we get the data directly from the source, and we guarantee the quality of the data. And that what is really makes, it's a very different business model. So it makes two things available for the lenders. First, the data is high quality, right? You get rich data. You get data for, let's say, the last 3 years of pay stubs, you get W-2s, you get reports, summaries, and we work with both Fannie and Freddie. We're AIM certified with Freddie as of December. So that kind of, I guess, proves that the quality of data is good. But the second part to it is we are also working, when you work with a borrower, they give you all the data that is accepted by, let's say, Freddie, right? In that situation, it's the process is done. It's really quick. It's straightforward process, takes about 30 seconds. And the second piece is, because we don't have to go employer by employer or payroll provider by payroll provider and pay a toll fee like some other databases do, we can save you a lot of money. So our cost is really just implementation costs and working with you, so you can save up to 80% on your verification expenses today. And these are the two major benefits. I would say the secondary benefit, and I think Femi will talk about it, is actually because of the good quality and how fast it is. You can put it right at the front of application. So you can cast the wide net, you can get more data up front, and the cycle times on these loans, because if you look at pieces you need that to verify, to underwrite a loan, is one of them is income and employment, and the other one is asset. If you could get everything up front while you have the borrower on the phone, or even before you have them on the phone, then manufacturing that loan becomes very cheap and the risks are reduced. So all in all, it's a very different way to approach acquiring the data and acquiring data directly from the payroll providers or bank, but with the same benefits as with any other automated solutions.
Can I jump in here and
right before
your platform real quick?
Yeah, please, Femi, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things Kirill mentioned is that they don't have to attach a database. And I think that's something that people that are sitting in my chair on the other side of this webinar need to understand, is the companies don't need to sign up for this. It's not, oh, we've got to start sending our information here and we have to get our information there. It's just a simple matter of whether or not the vendor that you've chosen is plugged into those particular payroll providers. And vendors like Truth have coverage. What is your coverage of employed people in the U.S.?
It's 92%.
Say that again, 92% coverage? Come on, right? We're going to get hits back. We're going to get hits back. Where we're not going to get hits back are the guys that's working on the pawn shop that's getting paid in cash. It's not going to get a loan anyway, right? We've got to turn upward and figure out where we're trying to document this. Like, you can bang your head against the wall and go look for a payroll ledger on somebody who's still physically writing checks. But those are the only people that the consumer permission platforms aren't going to cover, and it doesn't require a database. I'm not paying the incumbent company out there to access their database and realize that it wasn't updated but once a month because the company that I work for only set up that for their cadence to update items. Like, we understand that it's really bringing it down to the consumer level where they're just passing you their information. That's live. I think that's really important.
That's great. I'm gonna have Kirill is going to respond to the comment that just came in the chat. And honestly, I'll be transparent with everybody. I think a lot of vendors would shy away from answering these kind of questions on a webinar in front of everybody, we definitely have no problem with it. So feel free to ask these questions. Before Kirill does, Jody and Brooke, I want to give you guys a chance. How do you think about new consumer permission platform providers, like Truve and others? How do you guys think about them? Jody, why don't you start?
Sure, I'll start. So we have through AIM a whole spectrum of income assessment. So starting with the direct source assessment that we rolled out about 5 years ago, all the way to our newest offering that covers OCR from Paystub and W-2. So this consumer permissioned piece falls squarely in the middle. And I think Curly did a great job of really covering the benefits. It does reduce risk. It is a way for the documents to show up instantly, so you're not waiting for the borrower to send those in. And you're going back to source data. So I'd like to kind of connect the dots to P. Kelly had a question there about rep and warrant and what do you actually get. So with any source data, whether that's direct source or credentialed, it's rep and warrant both on the data and on the calculations. And Krill mentioned, it's all source data, like that is kind of the holy grail. I'll differentiate that from our Paystub W-2 OCR offering, which we rep and warrant the calculations, but we don't rep and warrant the data because we can't verify where that actually came from or where the pay stub came from. So you do have a little bit of advantage there again, with a credentialed solution, that it's instant and it is true source data. So it helps from a fraud and a risk perspective.
That's a great answer. Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, and from our perspective, and probably Freddie is in the same boat. We're looking for providing multiple opportunities for lenders based on their business models, and so we're not, we want to support different approaches to obtaining data as long as we know that it's secure data. So this is something that we have reviewed and considered secure data that we're obtaining. And we do have the same kind of rep and warrants that Freddie has on the calculations and the source data for income, employment, and asset verification. And like Freddie, we have a similar type products where we may just rep and warrant the calculation. We have a new income calculator tool that is specifically for self-employment income, and that's just on the calculation. But I think what we're talking about today, with the real benefit of the source data, gives you that much broader rep and warrant relief.
You have an engineer in the comments.
Oh, Michael, hi. Can you obtain the data in JSON format? Yes, you can. We make it easy because we are integrated with POSs, LOSs, and we can deliver data directly to POS, LOS, or we can deliver data to you if you want to develop a custom application, and we'll give you the JSON. But we'll also create the PDF format report that your LO can look at and say, okay, I got reps and warrants on this specific connection, or and in that case, they can easily move on to the next step. So the data comes in different formats, and depending on who is the user or what platform you use, we just make it as smooth and as easy as possible for the user of that platform. Our docs are public. It's docs.truve.com.
Love it. All right. We're going to jump into a poll now, our second poll, and this should kind of wake everybody up a little bit. You can launch it whenever you like. Our first poll was, do you use DU validation in AIM? And it was surprising, actually, to see the lower results, lower than 50%. We were thinking it would be in the higher when we were backstage. This next poll is, do you use a consumer permission platform for your verifications, like, similar to Truve or another option that's out there? Basically, is the borrower actually given permission to access their source data? That is what a consumer permission platform is. And do you use one for your verifications? And so obviously FEMI uses them, uses us, and we're going to get into, let me see here. I don't see the results just yet, but Sheila, when you feel like you're comfortable with the results, you can share it. All right. Well, it looks like 50-50. That was my guess backstage, actually. So 50-50 in the audience. And what's really interesting is in that 50%, people are trying to get more adoption and just get more reps and warrants with this. So it's just a fantastic discussion we're having right now. And I want to get into the case study with Truve and FEMI right now. So, but real quick before we do, why don't we jump to the next slide? And I just want to kind of frame that discussion with the lens of Fannie Mae's DU validation service and Freddie Mac's AIM program. So actually, I'm going to tee this one up first to Femi, and I'm going to say, Femi, why do you think it's important as a lender? Sheila, yeah, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Why is it important as a lender to use a supplier that's approved by the agencies? Is the rep and warrant relief. The stats that Jody was mentioning earlier and Brooke was saying that they had similar studies for of actually reducing your costs and reducing your cycle time. Those were people that were leveraging their technology at a high level. So you want to be able to use early check. You want to be able to use rep and warrants with your income. You want to be able to use rep and warrants with your assets. You want to be able to say, hey, I've got this. Not only do I have this in a digital format, but I have this in a digital format that's going to give me rep and warrant relief. Without the rep and warrant relief, you can increase your quality, but you still have exposure to your list, to your risk. While using the items that come with the rep and warrant because of the consumer permission, getting it directly from the source data, like Jody said, that's the holy grail of the data. We know it's accurate. We know it's true. We know it's not been manipulated. You can ingest that into whatever you have for an income calculator. You can run that through a proprietary service that identifies this. You can use pay for party services, and you have the source data. You have the rep and warrant relief. You shorten your manufacturing time and you eliminate risk.
Brooke, really briefly, do you want to give you want to answer this question really briefly, and then I'll give Jody a chance?
Well, I think from our perspective, the answer is obvious. I mean, we want to offer rep and warrant relief. We want to make sure that lenders are able to streamline their processes, and so we don't see the data if you aren't choosing an authorized supplier. So at this, yeah.
I missed one sentence too in there. The piece that I missed, there is no lender out there that has the resources to do the data validation or to do the validation behind the vendors that Fannie and Freddie have done. Let them do the hard work of vetting whether or not they're going to get a certain percentage of the 12-month history on the VOAs. Let them vet the accuracy of the information. Let's use from the selected pool that's been that's come out of there. That's a Herculean task that I tried to do previously and wasted a lot of time.
Awesome. Jody, you have anything you want to add, or should we go ahead?
I'll add one quick thing. You know, in terms of metrics, we do see AIM on about 1 in 4 of our loans at this point. So we are really seeing that usage increase. And we've invested a lot in these technologies in the industry. And I know, Brooke, your company has too. I think we only get where we need to go if we all really make this the norm, make the borrowers and the loan officers' expectation that we're going to really move the needle on this digital strategy. And so, to Femi's point, if you're using an authorized service, you're using a validated service, that's what brings you all the benefits and benefits the whole process. So, you know, it's really about how do we move the industry along and really make this kind of the process that's the norm for everyone.
Kicking and screaming is how we move them along. We drag them.
That's your part, Femi. I can only use words of encouragement, right?
So
we don't want anyone kicking and screaming.
But before we jump into the case study, I just want to say to P. Kelly, who threw in the comments there, yes, you're correct. That's how I interpreted the explanation too, and it's because they need to be able to validate the source data where it's coming from. Let's jump to the next slide, and I'm going to hand this over to Kirill, and Kirill and Femi are just going to have a quick discussion back and forth about his experience with Truth. Go take it away, Kirill.
1,000,000% unrehearsed conversation.
Well, first, Femi, thanks for being a customer, and we really appreciate the partnership. And Jody and Brooke, thanks for being great partners as well. It's been wonderful working with you. Femi, I guess let's just start with how do you use Truth today? What products do you use, and what's your tech stack? Where do you use Truth in terms of your funnel of the application and technology?
Sure. We use the VOA product from Truth very recently, and we use the verification of income product from Truth presently right now. We're using them at our POS. They're actually they're not quite integrated in, but as soon as our POS is done, it fires off a webhook that throws off the Truth piece, so that we can start capturing data at the point of application as quickly as possible, so that we can have as much rich data as we can to make the decision as quickly as possible. And also use it in an attempt to limit the costs. I know we've been saying use a service, use a payroll provider service, or sorry, use a consumer permission data provider service over and over, and we haven't mentioned any of the cost savings. Since we started this dance together, we've taken our cost for verifications from 8 basis points to loans down to 3 basis points per loans by using your consumer permission service.
I think you got to say that again. You got to say
Yeah,
that
I
again.
think
I gotta say it again. Gotta say it. We went from 8 basis points per verification cost, largely using the incumbent database service, to about 3 basis points per verification cost using consumer permissions.
Wow.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we are going to be at a heavy focus in 24 and into 25 into extracting every bit of rep and warrant that we can and kind of fast laning those through our underwriting process that says I can have somebody that has X, Y, and Z skill do A, B, and C task because they only have to look at this subsection of the information because I have rep and warrant on the rest of it. So we're going to try and crank up the volume really fast and really, really, really lean into where we can get that rep and warrant relief with your product.
Thank you, Femi. So savings and reps and warrants. What else do you see in terms of metrics, right? You spoke a little bit about the cost of like speed of manufacturing the loan and also how much manual labor goes into producing every loan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So let's do it from an operations manager's chair. So I'm sitting in here and I'm saying my underwriters are doing X.X files per day. And they're doing X.X files per day because when they get to a pay stub, they have to look at the address. They have to look at the name on the pay stub. They have to look at the name of the company. Does it match the 1003? Are the deposits matching what's going in here? Are the deductions correct? Are there any additional deductions for what's going on? Our company's been working on a document to get us into a task-oriented production system, and the document for what you look at on a pay stub is mind-boggling. I left the meeting the other day and I said, I don't ever want to see another pay stub ever again. When I get these platform or when I get these reports back from True, I can do what the other person was asking about. Can we get it in JSON format so I can get it to my engineers and I can have them run it through my calculation and say, this is my number. I can take the report back and say, I've been working on this OCR technology and you guys no longer need to be trained on every permutation of what a pay stub looks like. And we can say, I need you to train on this format for my items and I can get my information back quickly. You can look at something like another calculation service that has rep and warrants as well to what they're calculating, if that's what your source is. The benefits of having a standardized format that I can have one of my people in the underwriting say, I don't need to look at any of this other information. I only need to calculate. Even when you don't have reps and warrants, you can pick up in your manufacturing setup. Other examples are things like QA or QC. You got to do 10% of your total files to keep up with agency standards, and that's the minimum guidelines. There are a lot of folks that are trying to do more and more and more. All right, and that costs if you're using a third-party service. That costs if you're using internal labor for it. If I can come up and say I have rep and warrant from this, I cross that off the list. So now I've got a file that was done from underwriting. It's moving itself over to closing. And my QC person has 18 tasks less to look at. That means that I'm shortening my cycle time and I can get to my closing department faster. You can find ways in your manufacturing process that start at the POS for document collection and that go all the way through shipping, where you can just sit there and say, I can save here, I can save here, I can save here, I can save here, all the way throughout the manufacturing cost or throughout the manufacturing process. It's ridiculous how many points your people touch things. And my favorite of everything is that I don't need to check the checker. Everybody who has sat in a room with me has heard me say, I lose my mind when an LO checks an LOA and the processor checks the LO and the underwriter checks the processor and the QC person checks the underwriter and then the investor check. Why? Find the source of data, validate the source of data, lock it down and move on. right? Once you start doing that, you will start seeing cycle times just drastically shorten.
I guess the last question, Femi, is with the cycle times, how do loans where consumers engage on consumer permission data and they can get verified instantly, how does the pull-through rate looks on those type of applications versus more manual type of applications?
How do you know what I'm doing this week? Working on that this week. I don't have an actual number for you, but what we wanted to come up with is I've had people say they're being penny wise and maybe pound foolish, and they're worried about what their upfront cost is because they do so many pre-applications and their conversion rate is a little bit lower. Some of the benefits from your particular program, you get multiple re-verifications for up to 90 days, so your capture percentage is larger, which means that your income is good for as long as it can be, right? Whereas you need to have a pay stub document, it needs to be within 30 days of the application. It takes you 42 days to find a house because inventory is low. Now you're going back and you're collecting the same document earlier. Jody even mentioned earlier in the Stratmore surveys, you want to anger a customer, ask him for something you've already gotten. Right? It doesn't even matter if you explain, yes, that was at the beginning of this, but it needs to be 30 days later, or it needs to be within 30 days of your application. They don't understand. They don't care. We know what Fannie and Freddie's guidance is. We know that if we can make them do something one time, we're going to have a higher capture percentage, right? So I'm working on a study for that so that I can actually come up with some real numbers. But just in the simple fact that you can alleviate the number one frustration to your borrower by using a consumer permission platform, people are getting used to this. They're getting used to saving their passwords in their Google profile. One of the challenges that we saw when we started rolling this out was when people changed jobs. It's okay that they change jobs. If they still have access to their ADP to go log into their old 401k, they can still get those same documents up front all the way there. And I can tell you with 1,000,000% certainty, if you give a customer the actual answer for what they're allowed to shop for on day one, you're going to be stickier than saying, oh, you've changed your loan amount, let me go check again. Oh, we've done this, let me go check again. Now we're talking about overtime. Could you give me your last 2 pay stubs from the end of the year because I don't want to spend $60 on a verification from the incumbent, right? Like there's ways that you can get through this particular platform that gives you your data upfront, that gives you the most accurate piece of information, and that's going to make everybody stickier, right? The experience is just infinitely better.
All right.
Amy's got a great question that hits in there. Stone cold, yeah, it is. It absolutely on the agency products all day long. This is the same documentation level that that a written verification would have been. Richard or Kirill, you guys want to actually talk about what people get back out of the box from you guys?
Kirill, go ahead.
I can cover it. It's 3 pieces, right? You get a JSON file with all the information. You get a PDF of all the documents, W2 pay stubs, and then you get also a report. And the report is the most rich report, which can be with attached PDFs of pay stubs and W2s, or just by itself, where you can see all the income summary, pay stub information, income broken down, all the identity information, everything. It's about 150 data points that we return instantly that you can look at. And again, it's within the guidelines of both Freddie and Fannie.
Excellent. So, hey, before we're going to jump to the next slide, and this is kind of our send-off question. But Femi and I were at a conference recently together, and I was in the room with a bunch of lenders, and I just surveyed the room and said, of all the lenders here, and there's probably 20 lenders in the room, I said, of all the lenders here, how many of you are going to sign up with a consumer permission provider this year? Or you know that you need to this year, as is how it was phrased. And 100% of the lenders said yes. So this is just something that needs to be done at this point, right? In terms of like cost savings and optimizing from most of the lenders that by far the majority that we've spoken to. The question is just how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it. So, but this is a good send-off question that I want to end on. And Femi, I'm going to give this to you first, but I want you to answer. There was earlier a question in the chat where someone wanted to talk about how do you get this adopted? There was actually 2 or 3 comments around adoption and how do you get your organization, your LOs to start using it, right? And so how would you advise lenders to create their digital strategy? And I'd love you to touch on that a little bit.
All right, so I'm going to try and breathe and talk through this as quickly as I can, but keep it concise. Number one, develop a plan and then check to make sure that each step that you make along the way is actually bringing you back to what that original plan goal is. So set your overarching theme, and then you can say, oh, I started to get into this, I started to get into this. In this business, we go down rabbit holes left and right. You want to make sure that you're still pointed at the same path. So our particular goal for Revolution is to get between 16 and 20% of our files to have the rep and warrants for day one certainty or AIM validation. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of 24 and much of 25 on, is until we can start fast laning like 20% of our production. That's what we want to do. So every step that we make along the way has to come back and say, is this in service of this? How does this help? How does this help? Now, your strategy or your starting point doesn't have to be 16% usage. Your starting point could be increased conversion from your loan officers. So then it's a question of whether or not you can educate them on how much faster the loans can be done by using digital strategies. Your goal could be, how do I get consumer experience to this? So you take a look at the Stratmore surveys and whatnot and say, what causes angst amongst borrowers? And say, how can we take a digital item to eliminate that? Pick your starting point and make sure each of your steps along the way get you in that direction. I think that's where I would advise everybody on the broadest scale of how to start this.
Jody, do you want to take a stab?
I will. First, I'm going to answer the last question that came in the chat so we get to it. Talks about income report being acceptable in place of pay stub W-2 when it's not rep and warranted. There's different types of rep and warrant. So rep and warrant, keep in mind, means like income rep and warrant on calculations mean you had enough income to fully qualify for the loan. There's another scenario where we might grant through AIM partial rep and warrant, which means we were good with what we saw for this borrower for this job, but it still wasn't enough income for the whole loan. So I'm just going to tell people, it's really important to read those messages. The other thing is, even if we didn't grant rep and warrant, we will give you messages about what we saw in that report. Maybe the income calculated didn't match what was on the loan app close enough, and we'll tell you that. We'll tell you if there are problems with the data. We'll tell you if there's risk of fluctuating income. So there's value in that report, whether you got rep and warrant or whether you didn't. And I don't think we touched on that on any of the other things, but it's just super important to read that messaging that comes back and make sure that you're using the whole thing. So back on Femi, your point about tracking progress, we also did roll out some eco reporting in Freddie Mac's technology, so lenders can track their progress, and you can see, what's coming through, what'd you get rep and warrant, and in cases that you didn't, why not? So there's some good tips there. Now back to the question. Sorry, Richard, was how do you advise lenders to create a strategy? I think thinking end-to-end is super important and making sure the borrowers and loan officers know this. So what I see lenders do is, well, ask the borrower to do their assets, and now ask them to do their payroll, and now ask them for something else. Set the stage at the very beginning with your loan officers and the borrower that we are a digital first company, and digital first means the borrower enters their loan app, the borrower does their bank statements online, the borrower does their payroll, they do e-disclosure, and ideally they close through an e-mortgage or at least a hybrid. And that way your loan officers aren't trying to sell piecemeal, and you as a lender say, we have a digital strategy, and this is it. So that's my advice, is think holistically, not trying to really just do one thing at a time.
Love it. Brooke?
Yeah, and so I'll just reiterate a few more tactical pieces of this, because I think we've talked about high-level I mean, you've used the term strategy here, but there are some tactical things to think about, like adjusting your workflow, which is what Jody was just talking about, pushing that, obtaining the digital documents upfront, thinking about any technology changes you might need to make in order to make this happen. And then training your staff, making sure that you're connecting with your loan officers and there's a buy-in across your organization. And then I guess really the last point that I would make is around this. Not every consumer is on board with a credentialed model, and you need a strategy to make sure that they're comfortable with providing access to their data. They can get there, and a lot of people really are, but in some of our studies, there's a whole range of people that really aren't. This is a safe mechanism. If you think about versus sending an email, make sure that the consumer knows that and the borrower knows that, and hold their hand through that process. So those are some suggestions that I would have.
Spot on the secure point, Brooke. I can't believe I never mentioned that. Spot on that. Everybody's used to connecting to Venmo or Cash App or something else right now. They're a little easier they are on their bank statements than they are on payroll items, but we can get the field there and we can get them without the kicking and screaming.
Yeah,
I love it. We spent a lot of time talking about that in prep and actually didn't talk about it very much on this webinar, but for another day, for another time. Kirill, do you want to take us away here? You're the last one.
I think that the adoption challenge really comes down to benefits. There are benefits for the business when you save money, right? It's great. There's benefits when you save cost on the operation side. But when it comes down to a loan officer, how do you suggest the benefits? Because the best option is just I click a button, I get the report back, and even if it costs hundreds of dollars, that's really not as much of my problem. And when you talk to the loan officer, I think convincing them that this is actually good for them, because if you run a waterfall of solutions, you run, say, consumer permission data, you get reps and warrants, you're gonna close the loan faster. That's why I asked Femi about the pull-through rate. Actually, I hope you'll see this in your data, but we know the data from other customers, the pull-through rate actually improves, because if somebody is willing to share their credentials and the process is faster, they're more committed, so there's incentive to close faster, and they're more willing to work with you as a result, right? So because they trusted you with their quite secure information. But for the loan officer, I think the biggest adoption is just make it easy for them. Find it in, like, we have integrations with a lot of platforms. And then obviously, like, explain the benefits of closing faster, closing better, because you don't need to go back to the borrower multiple times. If the document is missing, if you need to do re-verification, nobody wants to do that. As a borrower, we all went through the process. I don't want to be called multiple times a day during the meeting to just send you yet another pay stub. You click a button, you get the data back at any point throughout the process. And as you explain to the loan officer that their pull-through rate is going to, and close rates would be better, if you can incentivize with some commissions because you're going to get reps and warrants, that's excellent as well. So I think the adoption comes down to how do you motivate your sellers to be the best sellers they can be and just close faster and with a higher success rate. That's, I think, what really comes down to. And I think that consumer permission data fits right in there. We saw loan officers being pretty happy about the commission and paycheck at the end of the month when they use this data. So it's been nice. I'll leave it at that. Richard, thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. Let me just say thank you to all of our panelists. Femi, you were a superstar. Jody, Brooke, thank you so much for joining. All of these people are, and Kirill, of course, my CEO, everyone is available on LinkedIn. If you guys have questions, you didn't get to them, feel free to reach out. Everybody likes helping in this industry. So, you know, you can always get your questions answered. Thanks everybody for joining. Sheila, did you want to say anything before you send us all off?
Yes, I just, again, would just like to echo, Richard, what you said, to thank all of our panelists for participating today. And before everyone goes, we would like for everyone to respond to our poll questions. And I'm just in the process of launching that, hopefully.
Oh, MBA poll questions.
Yes, MBA poll questions. That
Exciting.
would be ideal. If let's see, duplicate. Let's see if we can get that to launch. Let's see.
Does Richard look like he's in witness protection?
Refresh. Unfortunately, we are having some technical difficulties with our poll. Let me see if I can get it to launch.
In the meantime, thank you at the MBA for having us on the screen. That was really fun.
Yes.
I'm
Thank
really
you so
excited to work
much.
with such industry professionals like Jody and Brooke. I mean, it means a lot to people in the industry that we can actually reach out to people at agencies, and that you guys are here to help us to help us deal with you in a better fashion. It's a tremendous thing. Every once in a while we start looking at these guys as the great and powerful odds behind the curtain, but it's really amazing to know there's people like you behind them.
We're just
Well,
real people. Yeah.
Yes, no, definitely no. Again, thanks for all of our panelists. And unfortunately, we were having a little technical difficulties with our poll, but we will follow up with a PDF and recording of today's session. And again, thank our panelists and thank you participants for joining us. And we look forward to you joining us for another MBA education event. So everybody have a great day. You can now disconnect. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.